Okay, so good afternoon, greetings everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen, and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So today I want to talk to you about, actually I didn't put the title I just remembered I didn't put the title in the thing on my Instagram. I think I've done it on my Facebook, but not on my Instagram, so I have to do that after. So today, I really want to talk to you about how trauma impacts your ability to thrive at work. Okay, I want to talk to you about how trauma impacts your ability to thrive at work. So I really wanted to talk to you about this because I'm seeing, with me setting up my business school that's going to go live next week. I'm noticing in some of the sessions that I've been in with clients, obviously I'm not going to be specific. I'm going to give you an overview of what's happening because of confidentiality, obviously. But yeah, I'm just noticing that this is coming up a lot more, and I'm noticing different patterns that are happening, and I'm noticing there's some insights and some breakthroughs that are happening with some of my clients around this. And I'm just noticing that a lot of people aren't really aware of how their childhood trauma or racial trauma actually shows up at work. And it's only when we start to join the dots together that people are starting to have an insight, they're starting to have an understanding as to how it shows up at work, and actually the intensity of how much it does show up at work without actually realizing. They just maybe thought it was, they didn't really realize just the impact of it. So I really want to talk to you about that today. But before I get into it, I'm just going to give you a little bit of housekeeping and tell you a little bit more about my business school, which is going to be opening. It's going to be going live next Wednesday at 1 o'clock London time. It's called the North Star Business School, and it's going to be a 9-month experience for newly qualified therapists or wellness professionals, or you may already have been qualified for some time but are thinking about going into private practice. I'm going to be going through this 9-month experience with you. The first term is going to be, as I said, it begins next Wednesday. I'm going to be talking about self-care for success. So we're going to be talking about, obviously, when you're a therapist, you need to be having supervision, which is one thing. But I want to really be talking about the other stuff, the self-care, how you set up your self-care practice, what you do when you're not actually in therapy, the importance, or not necessarily in therapy, when you're having supervision. All of the other things that really need to be in place for you to work really effectively as a therapist. I think sometimes this can be kind of glossed over. They do talk a little bit about self-care when you're at college as a therapist, but they don't really go into it. And as a black therapist, as a black female therapist, experiencing multiple intersections of oppression, okay, it's important that my self-care is on point, and it needs to be a priority. Because if I can't show up for myself, then I'm not going to be able to show up for my clients. That's point blank, point blank period. I'm not going to be able to show up for my clients if I'm not actually, prioritizing my self-care. And over the years, I've developed different rituals. I've developed different structures. I have like a healing plan, different types of things, structures in place that I use to make sure that my self-care remains on point all the time. And that means I can show up in a more powerful way for my clients. So this is what I'm going to be teaching in the first module. Okay, now the other 3 modules that I'll be teaching, the other one is going to be about money moves and the foundational things. So it'll be all of the legal things that you need to do to set up and practice. And then we'll be talking about money. We'll be talking about setting up all of your back-end systems as well. We're going to be talking about client attraction and marketing, and we're going to be also talking about in the last module, which is going to be about what's the last module? Just your day-to-day stuff in your practice. How are you going to be doing your day-to-day stuff in practice? Hi Beverly, hi everyone, thanks for joining. My menopause brain kind of got the better of me there for a minute. But yeah, so there's a range of topics, but it's all going to be about how you can set up the foundations of your private practice. So you can either work with me throughout the whole of the 9 months, Or you could just pick one. If you're already in private practice and you need a tune up, you need a reset, you can pick one of the modules and work, intensely, do a deep dive on that. Okay, so if you want to find out more about my North Star Business School, which is going to be opening next Wednesday, there's also going to be a taster on Sunday evening at 7 p.m. London time. Okay, so if you want a little bit of a taste as to what the sessions are going to be about, what you can experience, what you can expect, you can also ask questions and stuff. Click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Okay, so that's the housekeeping out of the way. Okay. If there's anything that I say during this live stream, okay, about how trauma impacts your ability to thrive, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Okay, then you can drop your questions in the chat, or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can drop me a DM, or you can send me an email, info@guideofgreatness.com, and I'm more than happy to answer it. Okay. So yeah, and just remember as well, this is not a substitute for therapy. Okay, this is therapeutic talk, but I'm not your therapist. Okay, so just remember that. Right, so let's get into the content now. So today I really wanted to talk about how childhood trauma impacts your ability to thrive at work. And the reason that I wanted to talk about it, number one, because I've got my business school, but also because there's this theme that I've noticed that's been coming up in in just talking to people, working with clients. There's this theme that's coming up around people not really understanding or being aware of how their childhood trauma impacts their ability to thrive at work. They're not really understanding the link between the two. So I really wanted to talk about that today. So the first one is this sense of unworthiness. So many of us have got very, difficult relationships, challenging relationships with our parents. Sometimes because, we grew up in a home that was dysfunctional. We grew up in a home maybe that was violent. We grew up in a home where the parents or one parent in particular might not have been available. And that doesn't mean physically available. It can also mean emotionally unavailable. So you might have had two parents in the house, but maybe they weren't present. Maybe they were always busy. Maybe they were drinking. Maybe they were drugging. Maybe they were doing whatever. But they were doing everything except not caring for you. That's still emotional neglect. That's still, an attachment rupture. Okay? So if that happens, then quite often I notice with clients that they present with a lot of shame, or they present with a lot of unworthiness. Okay? Because if your parents were unable to care for you and love you as a child, it's going to be very difficult for you to have any real sense of self-confidence growing up, unless you actually, until you start doing this work, going to therapy, doing all that kind of stuff, then it's very difficult to have any sense of confidence about who you are when you've had that early experience. Okay, so this is going to show up at work. This sense of unworthiness is going to show up at work around you not feeling good enough. Not feeling good enough. So Beverly's saying this is so timely, having just read chapter 6, Reshma's Black Heart and Soul and Psyche. Oh great, I'm glad this is really timely. This is a good one, and it is gonna link in with Reshma's work as well. But yeah, you're never gonna feel good enough, and what happens when you don't feel good enough is it can trigger two things. It can trigger work avoidance. Okay, you don't really want to throw yourself into any work because you're so afraid of getting it wrong. You're so afraid of failing. You're so afraid of being shamed. There's this shame anxiety, like, oh my God, if I do this, then I have to be vulnerable. It means I might get it wrong. Therefore, I'm not going to do anything. So you go into work avoidance, or you could the other end of the other end of the spectrum is you end up overworking. You end up becoming really perfectionistic because you're so terrified that you're not going to be able to do things right. This sense of unworthiness, then it drives these two compulsions either way. So we go from work avoidance to perfectionism and overworking. Okay, this desperate. You can also get this desperate need to be people pleasing as well. The people pleasing thing can be so painful because you inside you really want to be able to express yourself, to say what you need to say, to do what you need to do, to be seen and heard and acknowledged at work. But at the same time, you're in a position where if you speak up, especially as a black woman, as a black person, if you speak up and express your needs, where does that leave you? It means that you might get, rejected. You might get rejected. You might get the sack. You might lose your job. You might get, ignored. You might get kind of expunged from the group. Maybe there's you might get left out of the clique at work, which is going to leave you very vulnerable at work. It's going to leave you in isolation. It's going to leave you vulnerable at work. These are all things that essentially the root of it, the root of the people pleasing, the root of feeling unworthy comes from those childhood experiences. Those childhood experiences of not feeling confident in yourself because you didn't have that early attachment with a caregiver. You didn't feel loved. You didn't feel loved. So your only way to connect with people then is to people please. Okay, now under the guise of people pleasing, when it comes to work, especially if you've got your own business, it can also show up as under earning. Okay, it can show up as under earning. So you end up doing work for free, you end up over giving, okay, and you're not able to charge what you really want to charge because you're afraid that that your clients won't like you. Excuse me. You're not able to charge what you want to charge because your clients won't like you. You think your clients are not going to like you. So you've brought that people pleasing, that unworthiness, that sense of not feeling good enough into your work. Now your clients are not your family in that sense. Your clients are your clients. Your clients are your clients. So you have to be aware of the different parts of you are at play. Otherwise, the part of you that feels unworthy, that childlike part in you, that never got the love from your mum and dad, that didn't get seen and heard, that part of you, there's always that danger that the part of you is going to end up acting out all of that stuff at work, in the workplace. You're going to project all of that stuff onto your clients because you don't have an awareness, or you haven't done the work to actually to heal those parts of yourselves. So those parts of you end up just being acted out in the workplace. They end up being acted out in the workplace, and you're not able to ask for what you need because when you asked for what you needed when you were a child, your parents didn't give it to you. Your parents weren't able to give it to you. Maybe it's not because they didn't want to. Maybe it's because they couldn't, or maybe it is because they didn't want to. I see stories about parents denying their children things, very cruelly. I hear stories about that all the time. The scapegoat child not being given anything, being punished for wanting to be themselves, and for speaking up, and all of that. All of that stuff can end up playing out in the workplace if you're not aware that all of this stuff is going on. So you need to be very, very clear. You need to have an awareness. Okay, you need to have an awareness of how your background, how your childhood trauma, how racial trauma as well. Hi Maura, thanks for joining. How that can leak into your identity as a business owner. Who is that person? Who is that person? And this is why the self-care piece of the business school that I'm going to be doing, and actually it's going to be carried on right through for the whole of the 9 months. You'll have an opportunity to do group work, okay, around these topics, for you to be able to understand and explore, what are the pieces that happened to me in childhood that are leaking, that are somehow playing out in my ability to thrive at work, in my ability to really build a business, to build my private practice. How is all of that gonna show up with me in private practice? And I also believe that the shame and stuff that a lot of us experience from the abandonment stuff, or maybe it is to do with the racial trauma stuff, the stuff in society that somehow black people are not supposed to thrive. We're not supposed to have prosperous businesses. We're not supposed to do well. We're not supposed to support each other. Under the system, we're not really allowed to do any of those things. So there may be an element of a part of you that feels ashamed or hesitant about doing something like this, about doing something like, how dare you have some hope about building a business. You might have all of those feelings come up because of what you've internalized. What you've internalized from your family, what you've internalized from society. So it might be actually that you need to maybe go into therapy first before you actually decide. Maybe that the trauma that you experienced, it was so severe when you were a child that you may need to go to have some therapy first before you set up your business. Because if all of that stuff is going on and you haven't dealt with it, it might be that you just need to deal with some of that stuff first before you actually set up your business, because it will impact it. It will leak out at some point. And this is one of the reasons why, for me, even though I'm a qualified therapist and I've been doing this stuff for a long time, I'm still in therapy. And I have supervision, because I need to know, and the layers are coming off all the time. I need to be aware of when my childhood stuff, when my trauma is playing out. I need to understand when I'm not in my adult self. When my traumatized child is going to come out and start doing stuff. Maybe I've got a rebellious teenager that is trying to sabotage stuff. I need to have a safe place to be able to unpack those things, so that I'm in the best possible place to be able to serve my community when I'm actually showing up with my clients, when I'm actually showing up for my community. And if you're not thinking about all of these things, if you've got a lot of trauma and all the rest of it, and you're not dealing with that stuff, you're not exploring it, you're not talking about it, you're not dealing with it, it's going to be harder for you to build a powerful practice. It's going to be hard for you to build a powerful practice if you're not aware of all of that stuff going on in the background, because it will show up. I'm telling you, it will show up. This is part of the work. This is one of the things that, like I said yesterday, this stuff needs to be so much more talked about in college when we're training. Because at the end of the day, what you're going through, and you're dealing with other people's trauma and stuff as well. You listen to their trauma all the time, and dealing with your own. If you're not dealing with your own stuff, it's the transference, the bouncing backwards and forwards. Okay, with the energy, with the thoughts, with all the bouncing backwards and forwards between you and the client, the transference, what we call it in therapy, is it's going to be a mess. And you're going to be very limited as well around how much you can serve those clients, because you're not doing your own work. You've got to take doing your own work just as serious as you do when you're dealing with your clients. You've got to take your own self-care and your own trauma, particularly if you've had a lot of trauma in your past. And as a black person, we live under a system that's traumatic. So you have to take these things seriously. So it's important to think about, why you want to be a therapist. Because sometimes, I remember, there were times where I sort of questioned, this is way back in the day. Am I doing this because I'm trying to really rescue, I couldn't rescue my family. Okay, I couldn't rescue my family, so I'm kind of inadvertently trying to rescue other people because I wasn't able to rescue my family. I don't know if that makes sense, but that in of itself, it's important to have that awareness, because with that awareness, then I can understand. I then can develop some discernment and some resilience around. Okay. When I'm dealing with certain clients that may be bringing up certain issues, is it triggering my own stuff? And am I working with this client in a way that is where I'm not aware of all my stuff coming into the room? Okay, these are all important things to have, because I know when I'm getting triggered by stuff, when clients are saying stuff, but because of the work that I've done on my own, with therapists and all the rest of it, and in supervision, I now have the skills to be able to park that. I don't have to bring that into the session. It doesn't come into the session unconsciously, because I can park that now and I go, okay, I know I need to take that to supervision. This is coming up for me around this client, so I need to take this to supervision, so that I am fully present for the client. I am fully present for the client, and I understand. I know what's my stuff and I know what's the client's stuff. Okay, I know what's my stuff, they ain't got nothing to do with the client, and I know what the client's stuff is, and I can support the client with their stuff, because I know it's like there's a dual process that has to happen. Okay, when you're doing this work as a therapist, there's a dual process that has to happen. There's the stuff that that's getting activated in you as a therapist, and also the part of you that can observe the part that is also being activated enough to be able to go, okay, that's nothing to do with the client. I hope this is making sense. And it sounds a bit weird saying it, but it's important to understand that. And this is when Okay, this is when you know, as a business owner, as somebody that's doing your own therapeutic work, that your awareness is really starting to be on point, because you're aware of that dual process. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting activated by this thing that person said. But at the same time, okay, I know that I need to do this thing in the moment. I need to park how I'm feeling at the moment, because maybe it's not appropriate or safe for you to say it in that moment, to deal with it in that moment. But because you have an awareness of what's going on for you, you also can park what's going on to be able to unpack it when you find a place that's safe, whether it's your therapist or whether it's your journal time or with your supervisor or whatever it is. Okay, there's an opportunity for you to deal with it in that moment. But if you're not aware and you're not doing your work, it's easy for that stuff to leak out. In places where it shouldn't leak out, leaking out into the session, because you're not aware of your own triggers. Okay, you're not aware of your own triggers. So this is a really, really important part of understanding how your childhood trauma shows up in the workplace. It shows up and it blocks your ability to thrive, because you're just reacting. Okay, you're just reacting. And the same goes for another way that it shows up is through self-sabotage. You end up sabotaging your business. You end up sabotaging yourself, because again, your core belief is that you're unworthy. You're not worth it. You don't deserve it. I can't receive anything. When you do receive anything, it feels so uncomfortable. Again, because your childhood history is, my parents abandoned me. My parents didn't look after me. I was raised in a home that was chaotic, that was violent, whatever it is. So therefore, you're used to that. You might not want it, but this you're familiar. You're familiar with the chaos. And so then what happens is then that chaos ends up getting bled into your business. Okay? The sabotage and the chaos ends up coming into the business, because you find it hard to receive. You find it hard to receive. And in a sick sort of way, you sabotage it because it gives you a sense of control, because you know what's coming. If you sabotage it, you know what the outcome is going to be. Okay? If you sabotage your ability to thrive at work in your business, if you sabotage it, you know what the outcome is going to be. So it gives you a sense of control. And it actually it's more courageous, and it might feel more scary to you to do something, to not sabotage it and allow yourself to receive. Because underneath all of that receiving, or the fear of receiving, is actually the fear of abandonment, which is rooted in the stuff from your childhood. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. Just drop some emojis or whatever in the comments if any of this is making sense, because I'm going deep today. I wasn't expecting to go this deep today. But, I've had so many conversations recently with clients about this type of thing, and it just really moved me. It really, really moved me. Some of them are starting to understand it, and some of them are just in shock. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've really been sabotaging myself to this degree, because it gives me a sense of control. But when you're self-sabotaging, okay, then it does give you some sort of sense of control, because the fantasy is, if I sabotage it, I know what's coming. If I sabotage it, I know how this is going to end. So then I might feel like rubbish afterwards, but at least I know that feeling. I know that feeling. I understand that feeling. I'm used to it. I'm used to the chaos. I'm used to being disappointed. I'm used to people telling me no. I'm used to being abandoned. I'm used to being invisible. I'm used to feeling ashamed. You already know all of those things because of the sense of unworthiness that's rooted in your abandonment stuff from when you were a child. So you're used to that. So you just end up reenacting it. As an adult, you end up reenacting it in your business, because you don't know anything else. And the idea of being able to receive any sort of nourishment is just too terrifying. Because if you receive something and you start to enjoy it, then the fear of loss creeps in. So the part of you that's terrified of loss is going to be like, I'm going to sabotage that shit because then I don't have to feel it. I'm going to sabotage that shit because then I don't have to deal with the pain. I don't have to deal with the pain of loss. That it's not just about the loss of that thing that you sabotage, but also about the loss that you also experienced that you haven't dealt with from when you was a child. This stuff is deep. This stuff is deep, but it's important for you to understand how these things act up. You know, so the conscious parent is saying that it can't last, but a lot of people will keep repeating doing it because they don't know anything else. It doesn't last, but until they have a space to be able to help them understand what's happening, number one, and give them space to actually grieve all of those losses. Whether it's in therapy or whether it's in group therapy or whatever it is, you need to have a space to be able to understand these dynamics. When you're a business owner and you know when you've got all this trauma, you got to understand all of these things as a business owner. Because what happens when you don't do this work and you don't understand these dynamics is that you end up feeding like an identity that is kind of rooted in a lot of shame. Not only have you then got shame from the abandonment stuff from your childhood, then you've also got your shame as an adult because you keep reenacting it. You keep reenacting it and self-sabotaging yourself, and then you just end up hating yourself. You end up abandoning yourself. You were abandoned as a child, and then you end up abandoning yourself because you can't continue to deal with the loss, and then it becomes a cycle. It becomes a shame cycle that you can't get off it. You don't want to feel the shame, but even the good stuff, when you're receiving stuff, that feels uncomfortable as well. You can't tolerate it. You can't tolerate the good stuff. The good stuff feels uncomfortable. If you want to grow your business, if you want to thrive, if you want to be able to expand and open your ability to receive, you have to be having those types of conversations about your relationship to receiving. What is your relationship to receiving or not receiving? Do you find it excruciating to receive? Do you find it excruciating, when somebody gives you a compliment? Do you find that hard? If you find it hard to accept a compliment, how are you going to accept money in your business? If you can't accept a compliment, how are you going to accept money in your business? How are you going to receive money in your business when you can't accept a compliment? Think about that. If you find it hard to receive a compliment from somebody, how are you going to accept money to build a business? And this is something that has to happen over time. Believe it or not, people can sometimes think that, oh yeah, if I get 10 grand this month or whatever, it's going to be fantastic. I'm going to feel amazing. I've got 10 grand. If you've experienced childhood trauma, that's often not the case. Unfortunately, it's often not the case because it's not about the money. Because when you get the money, you're then going to be thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to be enough? Am I going to be able to sustain that amount of money? And sometimes when we receive money and we're not used to it, or we can't, our nervous system can't hold that amount of money, we end up overspending to get rid of it. Okay, and that might sound absolutely insane, but the discomfort around receiving can feel so intense that we end up spending the money because what are we used to? We're used to deprivation, we're used to failure, we're used to chaos. So we end up overspending and pissing the money up the wall because then it gives us a false sense of control because we know what the outcome is going to be. We sabotage it. So we overspend. We overspend and we give it away. We give it away. We spend it on rubbish that we don't need. You hear all these stories about people that win the lottery and stuff like that. They win all this money and within a couple of years' time you see them on these documentaries because they end up broke because they weren't able to hold the money. They weren't able to hold the gift. So the importance of doing your money trauma work, you'll find it. This is what I talk about in what I will be talking about in the business school that I'm going to be doing. This is what money trauma and financial therapy, this is that work. This is financial therapy work. This is the money trauma work. Okay, this is having these types of conversations. This is all the money trauma work that is important for us as black people to be doing when we're building a business, and people don't always talk about that stuff. You know, so the conscious parent is saying, I'm okay receiving compliments, but I swing between charging my worth and undercharging. Right, so there's probably different parts of you. Okay, if you're swinging between charging your worth and undercharging you, that means that there's different parts of you at play when you're talking about money, when you're dealing with money. So what I would say to you, the conscious parent, when you're dealing with it, when you're dealing with money, okay, when you're having money conversations, is make sure it's the adult part of you that is in that conversation. There's a part of you, if you know you're undercharging, there's a part of you that's unworthy, and you need to think about the part of you that is doing the undercharging. Okay, you need to think about that part of you that's doing the undercharging. What does that part think and feel? And why does that part feel that this part of me is not worthy? It's not worthy of earning this sort of money, of earning the money that you know you should be charging. And before you actually do the phone call, is really think about those two parts together. You need to I know this is going to sound weird, but you need to have a conversation with the part of you that's unworthy. Okay? And say to that part, actually, you're not needed in this part of the conversation. Okay? Maybe the part of you that's undercharging is afraid of being rejected, or afraid that the person won't like you if you undercharge. Okay, if you charge them the right fee, that part of you, you know, you think that part of you is going to be, maybe it's a younger part of you. Okay, so in that situation, you would make sure that the younger part of you is not making your business decisions. Does that make sense? The younger part of you shouldn't be running your business. It needs to be the adult part of you. But a lot of us, you know, we don't have a relationship with the adult part of us because we have got so many childhood wounds. You know, a lot of us have got so many childhood wounds, and even as adults, we've got wounds that we haven't dealt with. So it ends up being the unworthy part of us that is running our businesses, which is why they can't thrive. So the conscious parent is saying it is unworthiness, feelings of yes, rejection, need for accept. Right, exactly. Good. I'm glad this makes sense. So what you can do moving forward is really start to be conscious of which part of me is showing up in this moment. When you're talking to clients about money, or you're talking about, you know, whatever it is you're charging, just check in with yourself. Is it the younger part of me that's in this phone call that's gonna you know, give it away to somebody else and undercharge, or is it the adult part of you? Are you standing powerfully in your entrepreneur identity? The businesswoman identity. You're not the client's mum. You're not a charity. Okay? You're not the client's mum. You're not a charity. You're not their partner. Okay? You are a business person. That doesn't mean you're not going to be empathetic. It doesn't mean that, you know, that you can't give people discounts sometimes if you want to. It doesn't mean any of that. But the decision needs to be made from your adult entrepreneurial self, not your wounded child. Not your wounded child. The decision needs to be made from your adult self, your adult entrepreneurial self. Okay, your sacred self as well. Bring your spirituality into that. If you don't have to be religious, but you can, you know, every morning when I wake up, you know, before I sit down and do anything at all to do with my business, I talk to my ancestors. I talk to my ancestors first. And I just say to them, look, I'm here doing what I need to be doing. I'm here doing what I need to be doing. Tell me what to do. Tell me who to talk to. Tell me what you want me to do in terms of to make an impact. Help me serve the community the way that you want me to serve them. Help me serve my clients the way that you need me to serve them. Help me to be compassionate and open. Give me the insights that I need to help me to use the knowledge that I've learned over the years of doing all of this stuff to serve my clients in a powerful way that they get what they need. I say that every day, because there is a part of me, and I know you're probably going to roll your eyes when I say this, but there was also a part of me, you know, that, and this is the childlike part of me, that would run away from doing all of this work, from doing all these live streams. The younger part of me that still sometimes feels unworthy, you know, it would be like, oh no, I'm not doing a live stream. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to undercharge. My younger self would do all of that. But because I have a relationship with that part of myself now, I understand how that part of myself operates. That part of myself does not run my business. That part of myself wants to watch, you know, trash TV. That part of myself, you know, has no business running my business. My adult self is running my business. It's not the responsibility of my inner child to run my business. My adult self needs to run it. And so does yours. But a lot of us are not having these conversations. Obviously, because I'm a therapist. I'm giving you the tea from this perspective. But a lot of people in business are not having these types of conversations. You know? A lot of people are not having these conversations. So the conscious parent's saying, yes, I need that morning connection. Thank you. Not rolling my eyes at all. Yes, live podcast recording makes me want to take flight. Right, of course. Of course. So it's about understanding and acknowledging that there are different parts of us. We've all got an and I say this, I've been saying this a lot recently. We've all got an ecosystem of different parts inside of us, and none of them are bad or good or anything. They're just there for different reasons, and you know, they've manifested over the years. You know, they're different ages, different values, they've got different needs. You know, different needs. So Beverly's also saying, love what Reshma said in chapter 6, by protecting others from our trauma, we offer safe apps. Oh my God, that is it. That is it. And you protect others from your trauma by being aware of your own. The reason why people act out and do all kind of stuff is because they're not aware of their own trauma. They're not aware of their own trauma, so it just gets ended up acted out, consciously and unconsciously. And that same trauma is going to show up in your business the same way. So for me, running this business school that I'm going to be doing is really about giving people the opportunity to understand the internal world and the external world. How their internal world operates within the context of running your own business, and also understanding all of the practical things that need to happen as well. That stuff is really, it's mandatory. It's mandatory. And these are all the stuff that we're going to be talking about initially in the first module. Okay, it's all about, this is all under the guise of self-care for success in the first module, and then we're going to be using the tools and stuff that I share with you in the first module. We're going to be using it throughout the whole of the 9-month journey, because I can't see how anyone can run a business, set up a business as a black person living under this system and not be doing this internal work as well, not understanding the links between all of these different things, you know. So Beverly's also saying, I have took the bullet and put myself out there, making myself vulnerable. It's painful, but it's also part of my growth. Absolutely, you have to make yourself vulnerable, but it's easier to be, this is the difference between, if I talk about clean pain and dirty pain. Yeah, what you're talking about, Beverly, is the clean pain. Okay, you put yourself out there, you make yourself vulnerable, you do your work, you look at your own patterns, you look at your history, you know, you look at your wounds, and you those wounds can be turned into places of empowerment. They can be turned into strength, but you have to have an awareness around them. They maintain their power and will continue to sabotage and act out when you don't have a relationship with those parts of yourself. They're more likely to sabotage and destroy what you're trying to do, okay, when you don't have a relationship with that part. You've exiled that part, maybe because you're in pain, you don't want to look at it. You've exiled that part, okay, so it's hidden away somewhere. You've abandoned that part because it's just too difficult to look at. But that part is still there. It doesn't mean, just because you're not actually looking at it and you're not conscious of it, doesn't mean it's not still there. and it will leak out. So an important part of doing this work in business or growing your business, as well as your healing work, is to be able to have a look at how your history impacts how you show up in the present. It's going to impact how you will be able to show up for your clients. So if any of this makes sense, if this resonates with people, if you've enjoyed what I've said today, if it resonates, and you're looking for someone to, if you're thinking about setting up in private practice, or you're looking to do some therapy around it, click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. Class for the business school begins on Wednesday, I think it's the 4th of October, 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. If you want to do the open day to get a taster, okay, that's this Sunday at 7 p.m. Sunday, October 1st. Okay, you can it's a free taster that I'm going to be doing online, so you can sign up there, and you'll get a bit of a taster as to how the classes are going to be run. It'll just give you a little bit of a taste of some of the things that I'm going to be doing. So if you're interested in that, again, you can click the link in my bio and you can sign up for that class, and you'll get the Zoom link and everything on Sunday to join us there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you found today useful. I know I did go a bit deep today, but I hope you found it really useful. If you've got any questions or anything that you want me to answer, maybe there's stuff that I've talked about today, maybe you want me to dig a little bit deeper in it, you can send me a DM, drop it in the comments, or send me an email, info@guideofgreatness.com. I'm more than happy to talk about it. If you've got anything else, any other questions about the business school that you want me to talk about, I'm going to be doing live streams for the next few days. I'm more than happy to talk about it. So drop it in the comments or send me an email or whatever, DM, if you want me to talk about anything else specifically around the business school or business in general you want me to talk about. All right. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.